Howdy everybody, Steve here, KM9G. I went to an estate sale and picked up a fantastic used radio. It was an estate sale, so nobody there knew anything about the radio or how to operate the radio or had any way of testing the radio, but it was a fantastic price and the radio was a beauty. You can tell by looking at this thing that there are all kinds of marks all over it where the OM has just really enjoyed the hell out of this radio. Every one of these marks shows that something was done, something happened, some story to be told. I don't even know what the stories are, but I can kind of feel the history coming off of this thing when I look at it. A couple of things I want to show you real quick that you should do when you get a used radio. And turning it on right away is not it. Let's get over to the bench. We have the power supply sitting here on the bench with its power cord. It is plugged in to the wall outlet, and I have my Kyreets KM601 meter. One of the first things you should do is turn this thing on with nothing plugged into it and verify that it is not going crazy. So I'm going to have my meter set for DC voltage. I'm going to insert my probe. I'm going to check it out and see what it says. All right, 13.9, which is decent. 13.9. Nothing. 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 And then this is probably ground also in this plug here. Yep, 13.9. 13.9. I've actually had this power supply for a while, and when I first got it and plugged it in, it had over 24 volts coming out of it. Turns out one of the power transistors had gone open, and not in a good way that I would have liked. And my radio would not have liked it either. So that's one of the reasons why I always test power supplies when I get new equipment, just to make sure stuff like that doesn't happen. Okay, now that we got the power supply out of the way, I want to take a look inside of the machine and see if there isn't stuff floating around or disconnected or whatever before we turn it on. Anything black, anything burnt, anything out of the ordinary that just really shouldn't be. You can see some witness marks. These screws, some of these screws have been loved on before, so that gives me pause to check things out. Also, I'm just really curious as to what we're going to find inside of this thing. 8 screws on the top case. They really wanted to make sure that case did not come off accidentally. Speaker connection, that's fairly normal. So we have a CW filter YK88C and an SSB filter YK88S. Lots of dust inside. Might as well do something about the dust while we're here. Okay, this radio is old enough that I don't see any bulging capacitors. I don't see any problems with any of that. I'm not seeing any burnt out parts. This foam is a little crispy. These chips up here are Toshiba TC5067BP, and they're from the 44th week of 1983, so that gives you kind of a date range of when this radio was created. Okay, so the top side looks pretty good. Let's take a look at the bottom side after we put this all back together. Oh, that was the trick. All right, so in order to remove the bottom plate, you need to take out the screw that is in the middle of the top plate as well. Okay, the bottom side looks a lot cleaner than the top side did. That makes sense. There's a note in here, RHM 012188, and an arrow pointing at this chip here. So maybe they're making a note that this chip had been replaced. I'm not seeing any crispy bits on the bottom here. I'm not seeing any burnout stuff. Everything looks pretty good. There's an adjustment screw there. That's probably the tension for the VFO because it's spring-loaded. This radio is 3 layers thick. Quite a lot going on in here. Lots and lots of discrete components all over the place. Very interesting to see the different way that they do things. And most of the resistors are vertical and then folded over, so that will make them take up less real estate. Pretty neat little thing inside, but I'm not seeing anything that's going to give me pause from turning this thing on. So let's get it back together and get it turned on for the first time. Fingers crossed, the moment of truth. We have the Kenwood PS430 power supply that we just tested. We have the TS430 transceiver that we just did a real quick thorough inspection of. Real quick and thorough. We have the TS430 transceiver that we just did a real quick inspection of inside. Didn't see anything that was shocking or alarming that needed to be worried about. And we have the cell wave dummy load up here. So I want to make sure that when I turn this thing on, that this comes on and nothing goes into runaway transmit mode or anything along those lines. So let's give her a shot. Turn on the power supply. I see no smoke. I hear no noises. I'm going to turn on the radio. So it comes up at 1434250 on VFOA, mode USB, and it says on air. Why does it say on air? So that probably was transmitting. Well, the speaker's healthy. So it looks like 160 through 30 megahertz. That's kind of typical for Kenwoods of this era. Manual memory circuit, nice. VFOB. That control's a little touchy. We'll need to clean that. Yep. We'll give that a good clean in. So I have my trusty can of QD electronic cleaner. I'm going to turn it off. Turn the power supply off. That wasn't the one. Okay, so that works fine. Get some goo in there. Work it around a little bit. All right, let's try it out. Okay, so we're gonna have to make a note to fix that. Okay, that's got to be the memory channel knob itself that's acting a little crazy, so we'll put that on the list too. Notch filter. So there's a couple of quick things that you can do when you get a used radio to make sure that it is okay. I checked to make sure that the power cord was putting out the right amount of power on the right pins. I have received used radios where the power cord was reversed, and that would have been bad news. I opened it up to look for anything obviously broken on the inside, stuff rattling around, stuff that's burnt, stuff that's bulging, stuff that doesn't look the way it should look. You don't really need to necessarily know what you're looking at other than to know that one of these is not like the others, and maybe start thinking about doing something. Reach out to a friend, ask somebody at your local club if, hey, I got this thing that looks a little weird, what do you think? And then lastly, I plugged it in to a dummy load. I don't know if you noticed or not, but when I turned this thing on, it immediately went into transmit mode because of a button on the front of the radio. And if that didn't have a dummy load or an antenna attached to it, that would have been bad. The Cellwave dummy load is super cheap. I got it on eBay. There's a link in the description down below where you can get one yourself. Other than that, I think it's pretty cool, and we've got a lot more stuff coming up. So if you enjoy shenanigans with old radios, be sure to subscribe to the channel to follow us along on this journey with this old Kenwood. That was useful. Thank you, dog. There's a video right here I think you'll enjoy next. Thanks for being awesome. I'll see you over there.